It's 2025, a new year and the best time to turn your great idea into a business. Shopify is how you're going to make it happen. Let me tell you how. Shopify makes it simple to create your brand, open for business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with thousands of customizable templates. All you need to do is drag and drop. Their powerful social media tools let you connect all your channels and create shoppable posts. Established in 2025. Has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/promo. All lowercase. Go to shopify.com/promo to start selling with Shopify today. Shopify.com/promo.
Where's your playlist taking you? Down the highway? To the mountains? Or just into daydream mode while you're stuck in traffic? With over 4,000 hotels worldwide, Best Western is there to help you make the most of your getaway, wherever that is. Because the only thing better than a great playlist is a great trip. Life's the trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Book direct and save at bestwestern.com.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Music, the show that looks at the money behind the music industry with me, Steve Lamacq, and Music Ally's Head of Insight, Stuart Dredge. We have a handful of news stories for you this week, and then we're going to, as promised last week, answer a couple of questions from amongst the queries we've been sent. We'll get to those in a while, but for starters, Stuart, Sony Records generated $2.7 billion from recorded music and publishing in the last 3 months of 2024. Do you want to flesh these figures out a little?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're into results season where, well, any big company, its public, is kind of declaring its results for the last quarter of last year. Mm-hmm. And these came from Sony Music's parent corporation, so Sony Corporation, which is everything from PlayStations to kind of devices to the music side.
Right.
And yeah, I want to give music business worldwide some credit, because these figures, when they come out, they're mixed in with mobile games. Like in Japan, there's a mobile games bit of Sony that's part of the music bit, which is kind of very Sony. So they've done the work to kind of strip this out and get to how much money Sony's making. So yeah, $2.7 billion from recordings and publishing, which is up 7.1% year on year, which is kind of the trend for the major labels. They're all kind of growing still. Mm-hmm. Publishing's up, recording's up, and apparently it was the first ever $10 billion calendar year for Sony Music. So the first time they've made more than $10 billion in a single year. Mm-hmm. And it's partly a mix of streaming growing and streaming subscriptions still growing and all the business going up. But I thought MBW was quite interesting because they went through all the acquisitions that Sony's made over the last few years, like everything from like Queen's catalog and Pink Floyd to buying companies like AWOL and The Orchard and EMI Publishing. And so you get this sense that, like all the major labels really, the growth is partly about the industry growing and streaming doing well for them, but it's also about them buying up companies that can kind of help them keep that growth looking healthy. So it's like organic and acquisitive, I suppose, is the way business language for it. But yeah, the business is very good for them.
Just before we move on from this, what are you sensing about what the industry is feeling about these figures which are being announced at the moment? Because on the one hand, as you say, they seem pretty healthy, but there are commentators, I think, who will say, well, you know, the big companies are surviving off their biggest artists, while at the same time they're simply rinsing their back catalogues. And that sort of success is rather short-termist. Is there much support for that opinion, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of a sense that this is kind of an inflection point, I suppose, for the major labels in terms of how the industry is developing. So a lot of artists are now thinking about staying independent, or if they're in a big major label deal, thinking about, well, when that ends, maybe they want to have more ownership of their master recordings and more kind of creative control. So I think, yeah, all the major labels are looking at this future world where artist deals may be evolving to be more weighted in the artist's favor. They're also looking at places like Africa, India, Latin America, Southeast Asia, and they're making a lot of moves in those. We talk about this quite a lot, don't we, about how they're buying companies around there. So they're looking at this world where they want to be doing a lot more business in these markets that traditionally have been not the biggest markets in the world. So yeah, so I don't think it's like it's not that it's a short-term growth, but there is a sense that they're going to have to evolve. It's the next stage of their evolution if they want to stay as big as they are and keep growing. And so they're dealing with those challenges. And some of that is also about layoffs. I think they're laying off people in the US, in the UK, in the big markets, but they are hiring people and buying companies in these new parts of the world for them. So yeah, kind of changes afoot, and it's I don't know, it's a kind of a really fascinating time, but I think also challenging because I don't think they can take their dominance for granted in this new world we're moving into.
Now, last week, it was only last week, I think, wasn't it? Weren't we talking about superfans on the programme last week and their contribution to the music landscape? Well, do you think Spotify were listening? Because there has been growing speculation, hasn't there, this week, swirling around about Spotify's plans for a superfan tier that could cost, I think it's around a $5 more a month. That's the word on the grapevine that you're hearing, I think, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And this weekend there were two separate reports, one from the Financial Times and one from Bloomberg, who both tend to have very good sources. So what's either happened here is they've been briefed, like Spotify has gone to them and said, right, we want to tell you some details about what we're doing and you can print articles that makes everyone excited. Or they've just been canvassing their sources in their companies because they know this is coming, and it could be either of those. But yeah, and we reported on Spotify's financial results, didn't we? Was it last week or the week before? And its CEO, Daniel Ek, actually talked about this idea of a super premium tier, and he told analysts that he's testing it himself already. So it is the thing that's happening. But yeah, so these two reports at the weekend, the thing I thought was interesting was they both had exactly the same details, which suggests that this is exactly what it's planning. So it's going to cost, like you say, $6 a month more in the US, or up to that amount. It's going to be called Music Pro, both these reports said, so Spotify Music Pro. They want to launch it later this year, and kind of both these reports noted that Spotify has just renewed its deals with Universal Music Group and Warner Music Group to make this happen. So it needed to renew those deals to kind of make this possible, which kind of implicitly hints that they probably want to get Sony Music and the independent labels also signed up so they can launch with everyone part of it. And they both mention the same three benefits, which is kind of where we get into the nub of what it's about. Higher quality audio, so they're going to kind of match or even surpass Apple Music and Amazon Music in having higher quality streaming. Early access to concert tickets was mentioned as a key part of it. So some way of getting tickets earlier for gigs, which we could talk about in a minute. And then some kind of mixing/remixing tools to kind of do stuff with music, which reading across both of them, it's kind of unclear whether it's like just a nicer crossfade, like, nicer way of, or whether it is the full Eddie Temple Morris mashing up whatever tracks you like and sharing the results. So there, but the two reports were strikingly similar. So it does seem that this is exactly what Spotify is planning, and it's being talked about.
And is this Spotify actually trying to support artists? I know they like to appear to be artist friendly and wanting to give out information, and obviously they've expanded their service so you can see additional information about the artists that you're listening to. So is it partly an extension of that, or is it that Spotify have identified that there are users who might pay more for their service and therefore think, well, we can exploit their enthusiasm by charging them a bit more, or is it a bit of both?
I mean, it's a bit of both, really. This all starts with so Goldman Sachs, the big kind of investment bank, they put this report out a couple of years ago now, 3 years ago now, saying superfans are an unaddressed opportunity. So that, superfans would, in the old days, they would spend a lot of money on music, and now they only have to spend 11 quid a month and they get all the music. And so that's been bubbling for a while. I think last year they put this report out, Goldman Sachs, saying it's a $4.5 billion opportunity if you kind of charge superfans more for stuff. Right. And so everyone in the industry running around since then going, superfans, we're very interested in superfans. And there is a certain amount of dollar signs at sign, but there is also a sense that superfans do want more, might pay. Yeah. So there's that going on. And I think Spotify and the labels, the major labels certainly, they are actually perfectly aligned on this. The major labels really want the idea of a higher priced super premium tier for Spotify of other services, and they think superfans might be the way to do that. And Spotify wants that because it wants to make more money too. So yeah, it's one of those things where, and I'm going to choose my words carefully, Spotify and the music industry are aligned on this. Superfans will pay more. We can do stuff for them. And we can talk about artists in a minute, because I think a lot of artists increasingly are talking about, well, we're interested in our superfans too, but do we want to do that on Spotify, or do we want to do that ourselves somewhere else? So there are some little differences there, I think, within the industry.
I mean, I've got lots of questions to which probably you won't have the answers yet. For instance, will this entail a higher royalty rate if you're paying more money and it's a pro stream? Because the royalty rates are different if you're a free user or a subscriber. Does this mean there might be a different royalty rate for this? That's one question. Another question is early access to tickets. Sounds like an absolute minefield. How are you going to make that work? Because you need artist and promoter to say, we will make the tickets available through Spotify or to Spotify Pro users first. I mean, there's already all manner of incentives. You know, I don't know, if you've got an O2 phone, sometimes you can get tickets early. So there's going to be all these places where you might be able to get tickets early, but only if, you know, there'll need to be a structure and a mechanic in place, and then you've got to have agreement from all the parties. That sounds quite complicated.
And that's your own. You know how complicated that is. I mean, we were talking last week about the artist fan clubs and the Crow Mafia in my case, where you can get early access tickets if you pay the Black Crows $10 a month.
Yeah.
So there is the thing. Yeah, what can Spotify get you in ahead of those? The artist fan clubs. It feels like but it does feel like something super fans do want is I want to be able to show I can get tickets. So if they can make that work, it's a good thing. I mean, I was thinking about this because higher quality audio, like it's nice. Like I love the idea of it sounding as good as possible when I stream. People have really not been paying more for that in huge numbers. There was a point a few years ago where Amazon were charging £5 extra a month for a high res, or I think it was called HD subscription, so better audio quality. And then one day Apple Music said, we're going to add HD music, higher quality music, but we're not going to charge you any extra for it. And that kind of killed the idea of charging more for higher quality audio dead. And the remixing tools thing, I'm really fascinated by that, because it feels to me like to be genuinely interesting, they might have to go beyond the comfort zone of what the music industry wants to do. Like let me mash up, I don't know, Charlie XCX with Fat Dog, and then let me share that on my socials with people. That I'm not sure the industry would go for that just yet, even though that's what, you know. So if it's just like a things sound nice and mixed together, so again, so there's these three things. They're kind of nice, but what is missing? And I was writing about this morning, so it's fresh in my mind. There was a survey a couple of years ago of superfans from a company called Luminate, who do all the kind of big industry data. And they asked them what they want. And they found apparently they're 59% more likely than the average listener to want to connect with artists on a more personal level. So they want access to the artists. And they're 43% more likely to want to participate in the community and fandom around that artist. So they kind of, when you ask superfans, what do you want? They say, I want more access to the artist and more access to the fellow fans. I want a space where we can go. And that's what's not really in these leaks about what Spotify is doing. There's no community aspect. So I do wonder, A, if they're planning this and aren't talking about it yet, which is entirely possible. Or B, if some of this stuff around, here's how we get superfans to spend $5 more a month, risk missing the point of what keen fans actually want, which is not necessarily.
Do you not think there will be some people who will just pay it because the more enthusiastic a super fan, if you're really into music, and I'm guessing the £5 a month gets you better audio across the board. You're not just signing up to. I get better quality Idols music. So I suppose there is that. But it doesn't really feel like, as you say, superfans are generally superfans of one particular artist. And wouldn't it be better for the artist and probably make more economical sense for the artist just to do this themselves? I mean, obviously you can't start your own streaming service, but offering the things that you've just mentioned is a lot easier to manage and will make more money if the artist does it themselves, if they can be bothered.
Yeah.
There's the gap in the market, is for someone to come in and say, we will run your superfan site. We will run your superfan service. It's £5 a month and we will take £1.50. You get £3.50 out of this.
And that is happening, but it's all lots of small startups at the moment, really. And so the potential is for someone like a Spotify or anyone else, a YouTube and Apple, they could do this at huge scale and say, right, we know from our data the 50,000 people who listen to your music every week because they have that data. And we can put a thing saying, sign up to the Idols superfan thing. and then we'll take £1 from that. And so that could be part of these streaming services, and it could arguably have get more kind of momentum because they have all the people listening to music and they have that data. But you're right. I think I feel like the future of superfans is, you want access to the artists, you want them to be kind of doing exclusive stuff for you. You want to be able to kind of watch a live stream with them, ask them questions, and you want to kind of be part of the fandom. I think that's the way it's going to go. And that could be within Spotify, but it's not what's being talked about at the moment, which again, the way these leaks work is Spotify may be doing this and keeping it under wraps for now. Or it may be that that's something they're doing later on because it's the focus now. But it's, I feel like but there is that question, I think, you are, which is that if you are idols, if you are the Black Crowes, Fat Dog, whoever, some artists actively don't want the streaming service to have control over their superfan stuff, because what they want is they want to be able to email those fans, they want to be able to talk to them directly, and they're already there's a certain amount of distrust of not just Spotify or streaming, but social media too, of people who are in the middle and can kind of control how much and how often you can talk to people.
Well, I mean,
so that's the resistance, maybe.
Yeah. Also, what you get then, if the artist does it, is you own the data. You have the data, whereas in this case, Spotify has the data. Is that right?
Yeah. And the other interesting thing is that Spotify already has some stuff for podcasters, not for musicians, where they can charge subscriptions within Spotify. They can get the data on their kind of their keenest fans.
Right.
So in a weird way, what Spotify is doing with podcasters shows what they could do for artists in the future. So I think that's why it's interesting. But I think if I zoom out again, it's a good thing. I think even if you were just paying 17 quid a month for the entire history of recorded music at better quality, that's still a good deal. Like 12 quid a month or 11 quid a month is I think people talk about this a lot in the industry. You're getting a very, very good deal. Music is maybe being undervalued there. So I think it's really good that all these streaming services are thinking about, right, how can we charge more? How can we increase the royalties pool so we pay artists and rights holders more? But then the key part of that is, well, what are people actually going to want? What's going to persuade them? And so you can sort of see, I think it's still a period of experimenting and theorizing, really. And you don't know until you launch it whether they'll go for it or not.
Love, exciting and new.
Hello, Hannah Waddingham here. Have you seen the fabulous new Sun Princess? World-class entertainment, exceptional dining, and the greatest pizza ever.
It's a love.
Don't miss our Come Aboard sale with up to 40% off and free room upgrades. Visit princess.com or call your travel advisor to book. Princess Cruises. Terms and restrictions apply. Offer ends 2/28/25. Ships at Bermudan and British Registry.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does without me lifting a finger, so I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
We've had this lengthy conversation, as you always say, Stuart, given that we are recording this week's episode a day early. I'm in a different room as well, which I can hear bird song in the background. I'm not sure if that's coming across on air. It's very, very pleasant up here in the loft. But given that we're recording a day early, by the time this podcast is finally online, they'll have announced everything. Including some of the stuff we've just been speculating about. We'll see.
It's true.
Right, next, the world's biggest major label is spending some money to support mental health within the industry. Can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah. Well, this story, and I think we talked about this a bit last week as well. This story starts at the Grammys with Chappell Rowan using her speech to talk about labels should pay musicians a living wage and pay for their healthcare. And that was specifically a US point, I think, because healthcare there is, if you're not a permanent employee, it's very expensive. But so, she was basically saying to labels, you need to do more to support the health and the well-being of your people who work for you and your artists. And so Universal Music has launched a thing called, it's not doing exactly what she wanted, but it's the Music Industry Mental Health Fund. So it's not paying for people's healthcare, but it's kind of it's a thing you can turn to if you are a current or former music professional, not just Universal acts and people, but anyone, if you need help with your kind of mental health. and it will give you. It's really going to have resources. It's going to have money. It's going to have support. And it's with a non-profit called Music Health Alliance, which has been doing this for a while. So it's with people who know what they're doing. So yeah, it's a positive step, which kind of complements what's happening within labels in terms of how they're supporting their employees who maybe have mental health. They have mental health issues in terms of stuff they're dealing with anyway, but also stuff that's kind of enhanced by how noisy everything is, how busy things are, and the stresses of the industry. So it's those two aspects of well-being.
Okay. I'll tell you what people might find interesting as well on this topic, and I know this could seem a little biased because it's run by the organisation of which I am chair, but Live runs a series of online live talks, which are organised by the brilliant Gabby Cartwright, which have they've covered all manner of topics around and outside the music industry, but things which impact on people working in the industry. But the one from December, which you'll find online if you're interested, featured an organisation over here called Music Support. Music Support is a charity that helps anyone who works in the UK music industry who might be experiencing challenges with substance abuse or mental health issues. And at a time where Music Support said recently they're currently supporting the highest number of individuals since it started. And last year it had a 51% increase in calls to its helpline. That's just last year alone, which is obviously a very worrying figure. But they talk about friends and family support for people in music struggling with addiction or poor mental health. If you'd like to watch that, as I say, or any of the other talks, just go to livemusic.biz and click on Live Talks. Right, finally, before your questions, songs made by children with the help of a virtual artist and AI have racked up 105 million streams inside a game on Roblox. We haven't mentioned Roblox for quite a while. So for people who don't know what Roblox is, Stuart, how would you describe it, and how has it entered the musical landscape?
Okay, yes. So well, like you say, we've talked about it before, not for a while. So it's kind of like a YouTube of games. So it's like a collection of millions and millions of games. Some of them most of them are created by kids. So kids can go on there and create their own games and share them. But they're also created by professional games firms, big brands, and record labels. And there've been a bunch of artists have had Roblox games they've launched, from everyone from kind of Nicki Minaj to Coldplay, have kind of gone in. So this place, Roblox, got really popular. It's got like tens of millions of users a month. And it's one of the places where kids, I'd say like 6 and up now, spend a lot of their time playing, which you might be coming into that world at some point.
Yeah.
And one of the games on Roblox is called Splash, where basically you can skateboard and you can DJ. Those are the two things you can do in this game. And you DJ with this sort of pad that's quite like a sort of a professional music, where you have this pad of like drum loops and melodies and sound effects, and you kind of trigger them by pressing them on it. And you basically do this in a virtual club with everyone else with their little character dancing on the dance floor, which is very, very fun and well done. Anyway, 4 million people a month are playing this game, kids. So they're basically 4 million kids a month creating tracks from AI music loops and sharing them with one another. And it's kind of under the radar of the industry, although increasingly not. But they've got this new thing called KaiMix, where they can also create their own songs. Where you go on and you say, I want to make a song about this, and I'm going to, sort of, here's the lyrics or the melody. You can sort of hum and sing, and then it kind of finishes it off with this virtual artist called Kai, who, to add to the confusion, she's a real person. She's the games developer who kind of invented Splash, but she's also a musician. So she's a real person. She's a virtual character in the game. So essentially, you go on there, you make a tune. It's finished off by Kai, and then it gets played within Splash on Roblox as a soundtrack. And that's where these 105 million streams have been notched up by essentially kids making sort of AI music-fueled songs, which it's not Drake or Taylor Swift numbers. It's not like billions of streams, but it's still fascinating to me in terms of it being a way people are making stuff and getting heard that no one really thinks about much.
Yeah. And also encouraging young people to get into the art or craft of making music, I guess.
And that is it. It's not just pressing a button and an AI tune pops up. They're kind of being encouraged to be creative. And the interesting now is that Splash has done this to show how it works. But what it wants to do now is partner with labels and artists So that instead of its own virtual artist, Kai, being the person who helps you finish off your track, it could be any musician. Like it could be, they'll basically do a licensing deal. So I don't know, Taylor Swift is an example. It would train its AI on her music, and then she would be the one you'd be making music with. And then there'll be royalties because kids have to pay to use this that would go back to the artist and their rights holder. So it's kind of it's like a sort of a demo of something it wants to do with real artists, which I was sort of thinking about this. Like nobody, least of all me, wants me to go into the studio with Blur or the Chemical Brothers to make music. Like I could ruin everything with a single button press, you know? Like it's not something, I think it's not something my generation maybe thinks about. Like I want to make music with my favorite artist. But I think for kids, the idea of making music with your favorite artist in some kind of virtual world, whether it's a game, whether it's a kind of an online thing, aided by AI, I think there's something really powerful there. Like it plays into, I think, a lot of the research you've seen about Generation Z or Generation Alpha now, I think it is, the younger children. They love to create stuff. They want to make stuff with their favorite musicians. Don't just want to listen or watch them.
I mean, so if nothing else, it is a brilliant introduction for would-be musicians, isn't it? At a very early age, that you can work really hard, create an amazing piece of music, and not get paid for it. There you go. That's set you up for a career in the current climate in music. Sadly, you can even do a co-write for one of your biggest artists, and you will see nothing back from it. Welcome to the music business.
I did an interview today with a guy called Mark Mulligan from Media Research. He's a really interesting man, and he was talking about what people want, what young people want, and it turns out the first thing they want is He was talking about it's like they want the stuff they want love. They want people to tell them the music they made is good. They want the kind of likes, which is kind of I guess the way digital culture has gone. You want the likes for everything you do. So in a way, what they want is my song was played in the soundtrack of this game I love, and it got loads of streams. And maybe they don't think about money yet, but yeah, you're right. It is kind of a. But I think the other good thing about this is like so often when fans are playing with music, there isn't any money going back to the musicians. So if you are, if you're creating a remix of a track without their permission, so at least with this, it's like, how can we do this, and how can we make it a partnership with labels and artists rather than it be done to them? So yeah, but
someone's going to make some money out of it somewhere down the line.
Yeah, and the principle of, if you are an artist who lets someone train their eye on you and people do stuff with it, you get paid for it. So that's good, I think, as well.
Okay. Right, that's the news. Questions then. And thank you very much to everyone who's been in touch with us. We welcome your feedback, your knowledge and your queries at thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. We'll do a couple this week. Here's one question from Sean Foster. My local venue, the Half Moon in Putney, often has Sunday afternoon gigs. The few I have attended have been packed with plenty of beer quaffed and Sunday roast scoffed. Shows are usually done and dusted by 5 p.m, giving you plenty of time to not only recover before school on Monday, but also to avoid the rum public transport that often blights going out on a Sunday night. Whilst a pub like the Half Moon will have an all-day licence, are venues generally restricted to an evening licence? Surely some venues could make weekend matinee shows a financially viable proposition to make it worthwhile applying for a licence. I think part of the answer to this, Sean, lies probably in the last line of your question as to whether it's financially viable for some venues, because obviously what they would have to do for a start is, do the maths. Because you would need to book and pay an artist to perform. You'd need to pay the bar and door staff. And then obviously the venues have to turn the lights and the heating on, or at least the lights, which, as we know, is not as cheap as it once was with increasing energy costs. So you add all that up, and then the question you have to ask is, will enough people come? And obviously in some places there might be an audience, in others might not be. You don't know. I mean, in a lot of cases, I think certainly long-running clubs, which I know about, which happen on the weekends at venues, some of them are taken quite a while to establish themselves or to build, their profile or reputation. So again, it's a question of, can we afford to lose a few bob early on to make a few bob in the long run, which, with the margins as tight as they are for a lot of venues, might be a bit of might be a bit of a gamble. So first off, it's if they can. I mean, I'm sure venues are thinking about this all the time, trying to find new ways of bringing in revenue. But you have to start off with thinking, will it make any money? Although here's the thing, Sean. I saw your email. Saw the question came on an email, and coincidentally, when I read it, I was in the middle of having an exchange of emails with Gareth Barber, who's one of the team at the excellent Esquires venue in Bedford. So I hope you don't mind, but I showed him your query. And he said, I can't speak for other venues, but we've always had an early license here at Esquires. When I took on Esquires a decade ago, I inherited the long-running, regular Sunday blues sessions, which are still going weekly to this day. We run 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. We have also, though, started running quite a few ticketed shows as matinees on a Sunday. Recent guests have included Steve Ignorance, the fellow from Crass, Millie Manders, Henge, and Giles Peterson. I think it's a positive thing for venues to try, as there are only so many days that you can program gigs where people aren't bound by work. The key to all this, though, is being as diverse as possible in order to survive. But I do think that people get a kick out of a day party, says Gareth, which is true, isn't it? Particularly at the moment, whether it's a gig or the increasing number of daytime discos you can find happening around the country.
I was going to ask you about that. Have you ever played one of those? Because I always see those ones like Britpop, daytime disco, or kind of daytime raves. And I'm always like, oh, I do fancy that, but I've not been. I did.
One of those? Yeah, no, I DJ'd at the Star Shaped one. You know, Star Shaped, the Britpop outfit, who DJ all at various festivals and stuff, and have run clubs, obviously. But they do one on the South Bank, which I did just before Christmas. And there's John McClure's Day Fever as well, which seems to be doing great business, doesn't it? And I think the success of that has certainly prompted other people to try and emulate the idea of a daytime or an afternoon disco.
I remember when those came in, and when those daytime things came in, wasn't it? I think it was originally about parents. You can bring your toddlers to a thing in the daytime.
Yeah.
And then it's evolved into, hang on, it's parents who want to come out without their toddlers and dancing.
Exactly, yeah.
But it's interesting that what the $500,000 Putt is doing sounds interesting, because if people are coming to your gig and you can sell them a roast dinner too, that's got to be good for the margins, I would think, as well. If you can sell them food as well as
which I think works more for a pub venue, doesn't it, than it does. No disrespect to the Half Moon at all, because they're lovely people who run it and everything. It works in certain scenarios, but you couldn't sell a Sunday roast at the Brudenell. Well, maybe you could in the bar, I suppose, but I don't know if that's coming back to what fans want. What do fans want? They want to go out, have a pint, see a band, or have a dance, depending on what you like. I mean, but going back to the idea of running gigs and would they be popular? It was before we started this, I think, but I went to see Yard Act when they launched their first album. They did an outstore at the 100 Club, which is like a record shop in-store, except it's an in-store, but not in the shop. It's for the shop, but they did theirs at the 100 Club on a Saturday lunchtime. They were on about 12:30 and done by 2. It was brilliant. It was we had an absolutely great time. Obviously, then you get into logistics, though, because it becomes far more difficult. If you're a band on promotion, you're on tour, you might well still literally be on the road at the time where you could be playing a matinee gig, unless you can travel in a bus overnight and then you can load in and sound check early. But I mean, given the current financial climate, I think it's something that venues are considering. And I think it's a good, it would be a great thing. I'm dead up for more matinees.
Yeah. I think we've talked before about how promoters and venue owners, they are amongst the most resourceful and adaptable people in this industry. If there's something that's worth trying, they will. I mean, I would definitely lack energy in the mosh pit if I had a roast dinner beforehand, is my own worry.
Yeah. My only thing is, with an idea like this, I imagine lots of people have looked at it, and if they're not doing it, there are reasons why it's not being done. If you are a venue, by the way, and if we've missed any angles of this particular question and you have some insights on this topic, again, drop us a line, thepriceofmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Just as often a slight tangent, we should probably mention as well, it's a sort of offshoot of Independent Venue Week. IVW are working on this project to make more use of live venues, not necessarily just at weekends either, and not even possibly gigs, but they're trying to work around a series of different sorts of events that you can use the venue space for. As I say, that's something which is being championed by independent venue community. You can find more details of that on the IVW website. Question from Paul Bell. Right, this goes back to, I think this might have been prompted by, do you remember your list of the most expensive videos of all the time? And then we were talking videos and how much they cost back in the old days with Simon Raymond the other week. But Paul says, thinking about Limp Bizkit and the mega bucks they spent on their music videos, I wondered, what's the average spend on a video today? Assuming that many smaller bands do things DIY, do they still need people like editors and producers? And I guess the answer to that is depends on your level of popularity, really. If you're a megastar, you can probably still name your price. If you're a new artist just starting out, probably going to have to do most of it yourself. If you've got a bit of budget, or you know someone who knows someone who can pull a favour, then you can probably still get a director. But if you're new and signed, there might be a little bit of money, not very much. But this goes back, as I say, Simon Raymond and I were talking about this. Simon Raymond, who runs Bella Union Records, who was formerly of the Cocteau Twins, said in our interview the other week, when we were comparing how much people spent on videos in the 80s and 90s compared to now, he said, I quote, you'd be probably lucky to get a couple of £1,000 at best. You've been doing some stuff on this as well, Stuart.
Yeah, I have. Do you know, this comes just after I was watching one of those Top of the Pops reruns, and they had, do you remember that Fugees video? I think it was Rumble in the Jungle.
Right.
But it was like introducing Top of the Pops as the most expensive music video ever made.
Right.
And that was the time, wasn't it? When it was like, it was a badge of honor, how much you spent on a video. Look at the helicopter. Yeah, so I think if you're a big superstar artist, you can probably fund it yourself now. Like if Drake wants to jump out of a helicopter in a video, he can probably afford to pay the people to make that happen. You know,
right.
Hire Tom Cruise in to do the jumping out the helicopter bit. But I think that's what's going. If you want to make a really expensive video, you probably can, but you're less likely to get your label to pay for it now. So I was looking about something like I was thinking again. So the other day, do you know the band OK Go?
I do. Yeah.
Do you remember they did that video with treadmills? It was really clever.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, I hadn't thought.
And that was a cheap video, but it was very clever. And then they've actually parlayed that into this career, where often they partner with brands, so brands all pay for them to do their next big concept high video. So that is one route. You can try and find tech companies or brands who will foot the bill in order for their stuff to be in your video or for them to promote you. And a bunch of artists do that. Like Apple sometimes does that. Apple does like music videos made with an iPhone. Like every time a new iPhone comes out, there'll be a music video someone's made using it with their help. But then at the other end, I think I was talking to someone today and they were talking about the idea that music scenes are rarely just music scenes. They're kind of creative scenes, aren't they? So there'll be musicians hanging out together, but there'll also be filmmakers and videographers and designers. And I think increasingly with bands at that end of the spectrum, they collaborate with people they know who can direct a video or can, or have never done it before but have ideas. And so I've seen a lot of like bands I'd never heard of before doing really cool videos where it's just been the people around them they've made it with. It's not a hotshot director. So I think that's the thing now. But I was also looking into the obvious how AI is going to come in and do all this soon. And there are already services where you can kind of create videos with using an AI. So there's one called Road to Video. It's been around for a while, where you basically upload your album artwork and whatever video clips you've shot and whatever music you have, and it will create you music videos and lyric videos. So it has a kind of algorithm to do that for you, and that's somewhere where I think you could do a music video while using that for like 40, 50 quid. just with whatever artwork you have.
Yeah.
And that's going to become an option, I think, for some artists who don't have someone to hand.
The thing with that is you don't have somebody's vision, going back to your community of creatives. Mind you, having said that, I saw some storyboards for videos back in the 90s. I was very friendly with Andy Ross, who co-ran Food Records. And I won't say the name of the band, but he had a band and they were about to make a video. And there were so many video companies around at the time because there was so much money sloshing around this part of the industry. And he showed me some of the storyboards, and some of the plot lines were terrible. I mean, they really just take the title and make a literal video out of it. And I think probably there is something to be said as well, isn't there? There's always a point where the less money you have, the more creative you have to be with it. And very, famously, Geffen only gave Nirvana, I think it was $5,000 to make the video for Smells Like Teen Spirit, and they managed to make that amazing video out of it. Which, is one of the reasons why, there were other bands at the time. The one thing about the fact that, hundreds of thousands of pounds isn't being thrown at videos, it means that there will be less artists signed to labels now who won't be shackled with trying to repay the cost of these very expensive videos well into their 70s. I think
it's true when you can't.
Yeah, because you're just not going to repay, and it's just going to never recoup, are you? Do you remember? Do you remember comic strips Bad News? That spin-off, the heavy metal spin-off, Bad News.
Oh yes, yeah.
I think it was in the second one of those where Bad News are shooting a video. They're on the set when they get told, "Well, you're paying for this. You pay for everything, including the catering. You're paying for this," and then one of them tries to go and eat all the food because he's realised that he's paying for it all. So there's less of that. But yes, obviously I lived through an era of the 90s where labels would cheerfully sign off 30 to 60 grand budgets for bands who hadn't even had a top 40 record yet. But
I always think of the Dandy Warhol's Dancing Syringes one. Was that like $1 million video? Last Junkie on Earth. And someone was like, what if this was a Busby Berkeley musical with dancing syringes? But I think the other thing I've been thinking about is nowadays, like the 3 or 4 minute music video is still a thing and you can do great things with it. Mm-hmm. But there's this whole world of video you need to do as an artist. Like, so say you've got a new song. You need a looping canvas video for Spotify, which is the thing that plays in the background. That's like a 7-second video. You need a music video. If you want to do YouTube WoW, you need the music video, you need the lyric video, and you need maybe the kind of acoustic in the studio performance video. You need video you need stuff for TikTok, you need stuff. So there's like this, in a way, if you have a piece of music coming out now, thinking about making one music video for it is not just the thing you have to do. You have to think about all the other things. And the creative way of doing that is making a music video that you can use for these other things by chopping it up and redoing it.
Yeah.
But and I think, like you say, it's about creativity. It's not about how much money you spend. It's about how creative you can be and who you can rope in.
Yeah.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Going back to the question, do people still use editors and directors? There are still editors and directors and companies who will make videos to a budget. But alternatively, these companies, they might come and film live gigs for bigger artists or work on special visual projects. Because I know a couple of people who freelance in that world, and even that shrunk a bit, but there are definitely companies still out there, and there are ways of, making videos, but the budget in general seems to have shrunk. I mean, it does feel, when you talk to artists sometimes, particularly ones who are signed to a major label, it feels like the major employs just one man in marketing, that when you phone up and ask for money for anything, touring or videos, just says, no, there is no money, or it's a fourth, it's a quarter of the money that you want to do this thing.
What was that note the politician left for the other politician saying all the money's gone?
Yes.
Like that, isn't it? But I mean, I think in a way that question though, do you still need, I think, okay, you don't need an editor producer for your music video now. You don't need one. Do you want one though? There are reasons why you would. It's the same in journalism. Like, I can write you an article that has no one sub-editing it, and it will be a certain level of quality. If someone gives it, if a good sub-editor sub-edits it, it will be better. And so, sometimes you don't need something, but if you have it, it improves it. So a great editor or director, whether they're a professional or just someone who's new to it but talented, can make a brilliant thing. So it's that need versus what do you want, and sometimes you might still want that.
Yes, I was going to say, it feels like with a lot of areas of the music industry, there's probably or potentially less opportunities for young people to get into these careers, unless, of course, as you say, you go off and do it yourselves until finally you catch a break. I mean, quite a few bands that I've liked have pulled favours from up and coming directors, and the other thing that you do get is you get that director's name in your press release, which gives that track a little bit of extra kudos. So what you're paying for is not only someone to make you a really nice video, but you're also you also get as a bonus the idea that, oh, so and so who's up and coming and done some good stuff has done this band's video, so they must think that there's something that's worth spending their time on, probably for very little money.
And those relationships can be longer term, can't they? You work with someone on their way up as a director to do your video. At some point, they're making a film and they put your music in it or get you to collaborate on the soundtrack. It is about collaboration, isn't it? And those relationships between people who are visual artists and music artists. Mm-hmm. And that, whatever the money is involved, sometimes the creative collaboration bit can be equally exciting, I suppose. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for your question, Paul. If you have a question for us, or you're looking for some advice or information that you think we might be able to help you out with, thepriceofmusicpodcast at gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening once again. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the show in your podcast app and give us a review and a rating if you can. Alternatively, if you'd like to help out with the running costs, we now have a Patreon page where you can become a Price of Music fan, or indeed super fan, slightly less than Spotify, for as little as £2 a month. Just go to patreon.com/thepriceofmusic to find out more. Till next week, take care, everybody. Ta-ra.